Difficult life situations will come to everyone. How you cope with them will tell many stories. So the task before me in this address will be to lay out a response to this issue of our life. And I'm going to do it in two parts. First, how does contemporary psychological practice help us cope with our difficult life situations? And second, what particular contribution does our religion, our new faith religion, make to the way we cope? Two parts. Most people, when they run into a difficult life situation, don't give religion any place, apart perhaps from saying, "Oh God, what next?" Some people may be religiously or spiritually involved, and they may go a little further than this. They may do as Job did, as we read about him in the Old Testament. They want to argue with God. Why are you doing this to me? Why now? Why at all? After all my religious participation over the years, what is the point of religion if it has nothing to help me cope with the difficult situations in my life? After all, have I been so bad that I have to suffer without any soothing, without any strength, without any glimmer or grace or goodness? So Job in the Old Testament wrestled with these sort of questions, as did his forebears thousands of years ago. And funnily enough, seriously enough, they're our questions. Has there not been any evolution of thought, of theological understanding, since those very early times? Or are we left with the same fairy tale fictions, the same misconceptions, the same mind states of those men millennia ago? The Old Testament Job is faced with the question, is your religion, is your faith no comfort to you? What was it like to be in that situation? He knew what it was like to be up against the empty rhetoric and the reassurances of well-meaning friends, of would-be theologians who knew, as theologians of course always do, know the mind of God. But Job's life situation responded to no glib commentaries that didn't have empathy or experience to back those commentaries up. And Job flinched. He flinched a little when he said, "The arrows of the Almighty have found their mark in me. Their poison soaks into my very spirit. God's onslaughts wear me away. Oh, that God would grant me this wish, that he would quickly snatch me away." Well, I shall return to Job and the religious consideration later. I want to turn first of all to how contemporary psychological practice will help us cope with difficult life situations. And I suppose in this regard, this address will be rather unique, I suppose, in terms of what you might expect to hear on Sunday mornings. But I hope, nevertheless, will be helpful to you. It would be so easy to slip under the fence and say, well, it all depends on the situation, doesn't it? Every situation is different. Talking about it in general terms will not help. In any case, I don't come to church. Some people will say, I don't come to church for any psychological lift. I want something else. So the pulpits, I think, have been repetitively irrelevant to my life situations. So I turn to secular theology, where a practical psychology speaks, or might speak, helpful words, and might point me to more optimistic ways. And then I shall look to see if the hand of the Almighty will open my eyes to some places and people where I shall find some rational soothing and some real strength to help me in times of my life's difficult situations. So rather than take the cop-out of pleading that it all depends on the life situations, when I ask for some help, it all depends, I shall treat them all as one, all of your life situations, as one lot on the platform right in front of us. Put them there, call them L, if you like, life situations. What does contemporary psychological practice say about that lump of L? And I'm going to say there are 5 things today. 5 roads in and out of this intersection of life. Number one, you will need to discern and discover the right coping skills. So often we just go in there, as we heard in the gospel reading today, that the man who had his weeds sown amongst the wheat, he was being encouraged to get in there and act impulsively, quickly do something. That's one way to do it. But he said, no, we won't do it that way. There's a different coping skill required. You'll know many people say, they're doing their best. They're doing their best. They're getting by. They're trying to do their best to cope with a painful problem, with a difficult relationship, with their loss of money or their loss of eyesight or their loss of a friend, whatever. But often they are coping in a way that makes the problem worse, that keeps them awake at night, that widens the disharmony in themselves and often between themselves and other people. Yes, that's one way of coping, but it's an ineffective way and often a destructive way. There are many coping skills. I'm going to just touch 3 of them under my heading of point 1 today. So it's 1A, B, and C. If you have a big lump there in front of you of life's problems, and if you put too much negative emotion around those problems, if you're worrying too much, or there's too much anger, frustration, then effective coping goes out the door. Good coping skills calls for a containment of your negative emotions. Now, that's very difficult. So sometimes we have to learn how to contain, how to quieten our negative emotions. But that's 1A. 1B. A coping skill means we need to control our words, how we talk about that big lump in front of us, or what people are saying to us about that big lump in front of us, as in the story of Job. How often your words do a lot of damage. So you feel you must say something. You've got to say something. You can't just sit there and say nothing. Oh, yes, you can. Sit there and say nothing. You see, ask yourself, what will be the consequences of what I say? Are you driven by your words, or are you in rational control of your words? And that's a learned process as well. Have you stopped to consider whether your words are helping the situation, or making it worse, or making you worse? That's 1B. 1C. Notice how one issue goes hunting for other issues. We easily become hunters and gatherers. All of our difficulties can be loaded into one basket, And you're then a two-way hazard. Two-way. You keep storing them internally, and you're weighed down by them. You can't see what's going on. You can't see the wood for the trees. You can't even face the day because everything's inside you, weighing you down or upsetting you. Yes, that's one hazard. Or the other hazard is that you empty them out. Some people say that's the way to do it. Get rid of it. Oh, yeah. You hurt many people in the process if you're not very careful. So that's hunting and gathering. It will likely lead to storing and emptying. We need practice intercepting our H and G, our hunting and gathering, and our S and E, our storing and emptying. So that's 1A, B, and C. I'm going now to number 2. Before we get into number 1, A, B, and C, we need to do some prior examination. There are some basic decisions. We need to clarify, what is this big lump in front of me? What is the difficult situation? And should I be there at all? Should I be in it, or should I let it sit there? Can I stay calm? Because, you see, I can so easily get annoyed or angry or stressed or distressed. Is it possible to stay calm? I know that if I get into that inner state, I'm likely to make faulty decisions. Try driving in the traffic. If you're in a state, you're likely to make a faulty judgment. I'm likely to start blaming others. I'm not wanting to listen to my own heartbeat. I'm ready to say and do things that will make the situation worse, or that will then leave me feeling troubled, even guilty, disturbed inside, tossing in my bed at night. So the second concern takes me further on from the first one, which is coping skills. It takes me on to how I manage myself, my anxiety, my worrying mind, my troubled spirit, my angry heart. Yes, in coping psychology, we talk about angry hearts, aching hearts, restless hearts, quiet hearts. Here we see how our restlessness of mind, our troubled spirits, can affect our heart, the health of our heart, and the health of our body. The eminent American cardiologist, that's a doctor of the heart, wrote in his book, I've mentioned it here many times, about this very issue. Dr. Dean Ornish, in his book Love and Survival, he said, chronic anger is so toxic. So where does that toxicity go? He says it goes into the body or into your social relationships. And we know this, that under the stress of that toxin, both the body, and our relationships are likely to break down. So Dr. Dean Ornish wrote this. He said, the real epidemic in our culture is not only physical heart disease, but also the emotional and spiritual heart disease. And that's a widely experienced heart specialist writing those words. So the basic decision here, that's what we're talking about. Number 2 is the basic decision, to see that how we manage ourselves. Anger closes the heart. Good, caring feelings are the doorway to opening the heart, a generous heart. So that's, in my address today, that's number 2. Number 3, coping with the big lump in front of us in your life calls for a strong sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-strength, self-liking. You need to like yourself more. Often a strong sense of self-worth gets lost underneath our self-hunger. And hunger masquerades as if it was worth, but it's not. Hunger is troublesome. A low sense of self can be very deceptive. It masquerades as strength. So you come out fighting thinking that's strength. Oh no, it might be hiding your underlying inadequacy or inferiorities. The angry self, the self-righteous self, the narcissistic, demanding self, the trouble self, may leave a whole trail of fear behind it. But it is a long way from the important goal of a good sense of self, a good integration of self, a good harmony of self. And that's what we're looking for. And number 4, coping with difficult life situations, the big L in front of us, will change according to what people resources you have around you. Do you have a good family? Good. Do you have good friends? That's good. Do you have good supportive people who may be neither friends nor family? Sometimes family relationships can be very stressful. Don't you know it? Sometimes your friends can be a pain in the neck. Don't you know it? Sometimes the people around you can be very helpful with some things, but not at all helpful with your difficult life situations. Oh, you think you're entitled to it. You demand it. You say they should be helpful, but they may not be equipped, or they may not be in the mood, or they may not be emotionally able, or even rationally able to help you. We benefit, of course, we do benefit from supportive influences in our life. I've called them people influences today, and those people influences can flow through the books we read, the music we hear, the people there. Soothing influences, listening influences. My Bruegel painting that I talk about, it sits in my office. It is a reminder of a very important theme in Jesus' words. He says, if the blind leads the blind, they both fall into the ditch. So I say to you, find someone who will be sure to be so supportive in an informed way that they will help to make sure you don't fall into the ditch. And number 5, your philosophy of life. Your inner philosophy, the philosophy that you live by, can make a world of difference to the way you cope, of course. But we don't stop to think about that. Do you ever stop to wonder, to think, to talk, to join a group, to recharge your worldview, to review your philosophy of life? It may not mean, of course, it may not mean studying the philosophers of the past, nor even the philosophers of our own day. But it could insist that you ask the question, what really is of importance to me in this situation? What is of ultimate importance? What is my philosophy here? Deep down in the core of my very being, what am I looking for? What do I hope to find? So there is part 1 for today. Some of the contributions of contemporary psychological practice. That I practice them myself, and I do go through them with people again and again over the years, and I know for me, for them, they're sound. So now I'm going to turn to the second part of this address today. What part does your religion play in coping with your life situations? And I'm going to give you, how many? 5. See if I can get the 5. In the Old Testament story of Job that we read today, we see how he valued the visit of his 3 friends. It so happens they weren't much good to him in what they said, but he clearly valued their presence. They sat with him. Listen to these words. Every psychologist here, every would-be counselor here, would you listen to these words? They come straight from your Bible. It says this: "For 7 days and 7 nights they sat beside him on the ground, and none of them said a single word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great." Now I say, isn't that a teaching? But of course they couldn't sit there all the time, so they opened their mouth. Job knew they were talking nonsense, and he told them so. They had little understanding of what his life was about, little empathy with it, but he stayed engaged with them. And he wrestled with the very questions that they were raising, the suffering and the hope of what was really a worthwhile life. He stayed engaged. That's the first thing that I want to put to you. A sustained engagement is where religion, good religion, takes us, as it asks the question, how will you cope with life's sadness and suffering? Keep engaged as you search for a satisfying meaning. And if no meaning can be found, keep engaged with life's mystery. Meaning and mystery might be good friends. The second thing that religion could help us with, it pushes the inquiring mind, the curious mind, and the aching heart to ask the question, what do you mean when you talk about God? Where is this God? The question of Job. Are we just thrown into this human life with all its quarrels and its conflicts? Are we here just to make as much money as we can? To do our job and to find a little bit of happiness? And then pass on? Religion of a new faith says, let us be enriched by another dimension, so that a larger view widens our perspective. Job said in his language, in God's hands are the souls of all that live, the spirits of all humankind. Hear his philosophy? But he goes on to say, he uncovers mysteries. He uncovers mysteries deep in obscurity, and into the thick darkness he brings a glimmer of light. Of course, you can miss the wonder of it if you talk about these words in literal language, God's hands, God's word speaking, and so on. Move beyond the literalism of it and get with the flow of the imagery and the symbolism of it, and all your life will be enriched. He uncovers the mysteries hidden deeply in obscurity, and into the thick darkness he brings a glimmer of light. The third thing that religious energy speaks of the value and worth of every human being. Oh, you know that? Or do you know that? Then why are we killing each other in millions? That's what we're doing, you know. We don't really believe this stuff at all. We'll go on killing, hurting, dehumanizing. Take it in whatever language you like. But at least we know this, that our religion, our new faith religion, says every human being not only has value in themselves, but they have a potential. and their confirmation of faith in themselves and faith in the unfolding of life's important strengths is hugely important. And it's our task again and again to be carriers of that possibility. Job's friends told him if he banished wrongdoing from his house, and if he treated all his treasured precious metals as dust, then the Almighty himself would become his precious metal, and he would have his silver, as it were, he would be his silver in double measure. But Job restated his worth before God and before the world when he said, "You know, he knows me. He knows me when I'm at work, and he knows me when I'm at rest." He could have been reciting the Psalm 121 that we sang. Yes, he knows me, and when he tests me, I shall come forth as gold. Good religion tests us, and I shall come forth as gold says there's a high sense of worth in each human being. Number 4, we can be enriched by the wisdom and the words of religion for all that, by the strengthening that is given through a sense of being close to those words, close to that presence, by finding some soothing for your inner spirit in times of turmoil in your soul. In fact, Job said, my soul is in turmoil within me. There is a ceaseless throbbing in my veins because God has thrown me in the mud and makes me feel no better than dust and ashes. I try to plead, but he seems so aloof. The wretched wolf has become my brother. Job was searching the depths for that new strength for his body and the soothing of his soul. And he was telling us somewhere within our religion, if we'll plumb the depths of it, there it is. Job caught a glimpse of that cosmic spirit in the universe that makes all human mind marvel that for a time, for a very short time, we have been part of it. He says, oh yes, I have spoken of great things which I have not understood. I knew so much about God, but now I see things I did not see before. And so maybe there is time for me to celebrate. For celebration somewhere is woven into this cosmic glory, into this liberating spirit. So what does religion give on top of the psychology of it? Number 1, it commends a sustained engagement in the exploration of life's meaning and life's mystery. Number 2, it seeks enrichment by a scientific and existential inquiry into that other dimension which is beyond the everyday human dimension. Number 3, it speaks strongly and intentionally of the worth of every human being. Faith in themselves and faith in the unfolding of their life's strengths and potential. Number 4, a good religion speaks of that strengthening presence that we know, that we sometimes feel, that we yearn to have. And it is a presence which has a vital soothing to it, soothing for the human soul, important for the human experience. And number 5, religion reminds us, a good religion, I would think the best religion, steps away from all the hoo-ha and reminds us to step out of the narrowness and become part of the expansive, continuing celebration of life's gifts and life's possibilities. Not just any passing celebration, no more than that. A celebration, an in-depth celebration of life's meaning and life's great mysteries. Would you please stand? We're going to take small things of life and by faith feel that they are lifting us into a bigger awareness. We will celebrate this sacrament as a sacrament of bread and wine, of meaning and mystery, of goodness and grace. I invite you to sing the communion hymn.